Let's open up a little bit of college basketball. And for those of you who know me, I don't really watch college basketball. As I've gotten older, I've just become more and more detached from college basketball. I don't know if it's because I just don't really like the style of play anymore. It's hard to keep up with the players. I don't know. I just don't watch college basketball. So I think some of the reasons why I don't watch college basketball, for one, it's too coach centric, not necessarily player centric. A lot of times, teams are playing in systems and players. It's like we can't wait to see that player play in the NBA where there's actually more space and there's better players around him, and you get to see him get out and boogie. Also, the one and done has made it hard to become attached to the player, because if you're not following high school recruiting, or at least just the recruiting of your favorite team, you really don't know who's playing, because you don't get to see this person year in and year out. And lastly, I think the emergence of what we have going on with the G League and the ability to play overseas is also taken away from the college basketball experience, because you have more talented players getting the opportunity to go to the G League or overseas and make money. And yeah, they get the money underneath the table to go to college, but when you're going somewhere where you're getting paid a salary and people know you're getting paid and you don't have to hide it, it changes it. And I think that what we're trying to do here in America, and what we've been doing, is college used to be our farm system for basketball. I think it was a great farm system the way that it was once used, when players had the option of going straight to the NBA or going to college, and you kind of you had a little bit more, I guess, decision on your route to going. But if you went to college, you weren't necessarily dinged for staying in college as players are now. If you stay a second year or third year and develop more, it's like, hold on, is this person as good as we thought they were? And the more chances, the more eyes they get on them, the easier it is for their stock to drop. And now, instead of going early lottery, you could be going at the back end of the first round just because you stayed. So obviously players aren't staying. And I think that we should start to move towards a more European model for our college basketball, or for our post-secondary basketball. College basketball is a means to get you to college, and maybe it can get you to the league, but I don't think it should continue to be the primary means for basketball players to get to the next level. I was listening to I was watching the Nuggets on League Pass the other day, and Joker talked about how he had to make a decision early. It was either basketball or it was school. It wasn't both. And I think that we should move towards that model. But the issue that we have is just the greed part in it. There's so much money made on college athletes, and right now, the only benefits they reap of it is some cool Nike gear, the opportunity to get an education, but they're not seeing at all any of the returns that they deserve for how their likeness is being used to generate funds for their school. I looked up what the 2019 tournament, just the NCAA tournament itself, brought in over $1 billion for college basketball. And I don't know. I think that college basketball should just become what it is, college basketball. It's its own form of basketball anyways. And the top players no longer go to college. They go to the G League, and we get them involved in the farm system that it appears that we're trying to build here in America. Kind of like they have in European soccer and even in European basketball. Get them playing get basketball players playing basketball early, because that's how they get better, instead of going to college. And hey, if you go to college and you happen to be good enough to go to the league, it's an option, but you go to college just to go to college. Am I crazy for this, Eric?
I don't think you're crazy. What I will say is, if they're going to do a system like that, a farm system similar to Europe, a lot of those kids are going to the farm system not when they're 17, 18, so high school age. They're going to like 12, 13. So if you are going to do that, it's going to have to start way earlier than we even are thinking. And the difference is if a kid goes when they're 12 and is 5'9", and then by the time they're 18 is only 6'1", 6 feet, like that hurts them a lot more in basketball because it is so dependent on your size. So that one's just hard to do. And then college basketball, I don't think the one and done is the issue, because when you go before the one and done rule, when players were just going from preps to pros, college basketball did fine. And even if they start a system like, if the G League becomes the primary place for NBA talent to go before they get to the NBA, college basketball will still be fine. So I know it is a money grab. If that's the only place you can go, the best players are going to go there. But I think, period, college basketball will be fine. But I think the fact that kids are using college as a means to just do this 1 year, then go to the NBA product is, in my mind, being hurt. It's a feast or famine league, and you're always going to have your like guys at the top of the top. And those guys nowadays are, I think, the best we've ever seen. Like the shot making, the playmaking ability, some of the best we've ever seen. But in that bell curve where it used to be a lot of guys in the middle, a lot of those guys in the middle now are not as good as a lot of the guys where that middle of the pack used to be when dudes did stay in college for a little while longer. Like the bad guys at the end of the bell curve are bad, and that just is what it is. But that key piece in the middle, that's the part where I think the NBA is really hurting out by the rules now, where people just go straight from the league and doing 1 year of college.
So here's why I think it's something we should do. Here's why I've kind of played with it and looked into it some. Yes, I think college basketball will be fine because there are people who are college basketball fans, and it doesn't matter who's playing. They're watching their team, they're watching their alma mater, they're watching their parents' alma mater, their hometown school or whatever. They're just watching college hoops because they love college hoops. And the farm system piece you talked about, yeah, we got to start it early. I absolutely agree that we should start it early. But if you look at the way kids are getting involved in sports much earlier, as far as training and playing a year-round schedule, what's the difference? Now, okay, we just take them out of their regular education as far as the schools they go to. You have your whatever, wherever your farm system set up, and yeah, they get their basic level of education so they can function, but they're just focusing on sports. I think the people who want to put their kids down that route would do it in a heartbeat.
Oh yeah, and I think that way probably is the better way to go if you think about it. Like the top high schools are essentially that right now. If you look at the Oak Hills, the Montverde Academies, Montverde Academy, those kids are from like all over the place. They're not all of them are from Florida. Same thing with Oak Hill. It's in the middle of Virginia. IMG Academy, the same way. So they're starting to kind of do that. The kids that are the cream of the crop in these certain sports are going to school essentially to compete on the highest levels, and that is it. And I personally don't have a problem with it. It happens in other major sports. It happens in baseball. Kids can go straight. Some kids do go to college, but you can go straight from high school to the pros and play in someone's farm league system. And by the time you're 19, 20 years old, be playing in the major leagues. So I don't mind the competition you're playing is better, because at the end of the day, Oak Hill is going to play the top teams in the country, but also has to play the teams in their conference where the best player on that team is a center and he's 6'3". And that's the size of Oak Hill's point guard. So it would be better for these top players to honestly just be playing each other. And that's what a farm league system is. You're not going and playing normal kids. And then in college, there's just so many teams, so many players, where you're also not getting a good idea there. So like Duke might have 3 kids going to the league 1 year, and then another blue blood might have another 3. And then you've got several other players like littered throughout the schools. Imagine if all those kids were playing each other all the time. It's going to raise the level of competition. And I think that would be the better way to go.
And I think it does something for the Blue Bloods now, because you don't have Coach K and all the other coaches fighting for these guys who are one and done. They're not going to buy into the system. You know, they can't actually create any type of continuity in their programs. And I think that's why you see Gonzaga's been a consistent contender. And then this year, you add your one top end player, and look at what we have here. We have a team that's so far been head and shoulders than everybody else. Because I even went back and started looking at national champions during the one and done era, and the two teams that we think about that were one and done champions, they still had veteran leadership on their teams. And if you look at any of the other teams, like, bro, it's littered with junior, senior, sophomores. You got the 14-15 Duke team. We go, oh yeah, that's the one and done team. But if you look at the roster, Eric, I mean, the roster. They had Quinn Cook, who was a senior, who was their second leading scorer. Yeah, you had Winslow and Tyus Jones and Jaleel Okafor, but you also had Emil Jefferson. So that's one team. Then I also look at the Kentucky team with AD. Again, another team that we think about AD and we think about Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, but their second leading scorer, Deron Lamb, was a sophomore. Terrence Jones, a sophomore. So it's not like one and done is winning you national championships. It's getting you top players, but it's not getting you over the top.
That part right there, I very much so disagree with. And I thought that was the truth also. And then I went back and looked at it. So Kentucky, by and large, since the one and done rule was instituted, has been, everybody has said like they're a one and done team every year. So they won that national championship in 2012. But when you go back and look at it, so I was looking at schools who had 3 or more freshmen in the starting 5. And then just also it says like experience. If your experience was less than a year, so mostly it was like 0.7. If it was around in there, you were getting play from mostly freshmen. I looked at it, and Kentucky's teams they went in 2019 to the Elite 8, in 2018 to the Sweet 16. He has like 3 Elite 8s in there, a couple Final Four runs. He's got 2. He got one time they went to the championship game and lost in 2014 to Shabazz Napier and them. And then the other team is really Duke. Duke had the team with Zion, RJ Barrett in them in 2019. They went to the Elite 8. The year before that, they had Marvin Bagley, Trey Duvall, Gary Trent and them. They went to the Elite 8. And then in 2015, they won the national championship. The other one and done teams, there really aren't many. There was Ohio State in 2007 with Greg Oden, Mike Conley, and Daquan Cook. They went to the championship game and lost to Florida. There was Kansas, and they had Joel Embiid, Andrew Wiggins, and then another freshman in the starting 5. And they underperformed round of 32. And then there was Texas with KD, DJ Augustin, and then another guy, Damian Jones. They went out in the round of 32. But by and large, the one and done teams are Duke and Kentucky. And if you look at it, it's really just, you're essentially saying it's them two against the field. So everyone says it's these veteran-laden teams. There's only really 2 schools that year in and year out have one and dones. And since the time one and dones have been instituted, no school other than really Villanova and I would say Connecticut, you can maybe throw North Carolina in there also because they've won 2 championships. No school since 2007 to now is doing better than Duke and Kentucky besides 3. So when people are like, it doesn't get you results, if you're going to the Elite 8 and Final 4 multiple times, you're doing something right. Like, think of Kansas is a blue blood and they're in the mix every year. They haven't done as well as Kentucky's done in that run. And those teams are typically pretty veteran laden. Louisville won a national championship, veteran laden team, but majority of the time there's somebody's got to lose. And you have 2 schools that are carrying a lot of one and dones and they are doing very well. You really cannot name, aside from Villanova, Connecticut, and even if you want to throw North Carolina in the mix, there are not any teams aside from those 3 that are doing better than Kentucky and Duke in that time since the one and done has been instituted. So people say like it doesn't win you anything. If any other school was veteran laden and had the run that Duke and Kentucky were having in that time frame, we would be lauding them. So you can't say that it's not working for Duke and Kentucky. But if any other school had that same resume, we would be praising them.
But I think the pushback comes because you look at the name talent that they have, then you look at the NBA performance that these players are having now once they leave the schools, and you go, the championships just aren't adding up.
And I get that. And at some point, like, experience, of course, does come into the mix because, like you said, the Terrence Jones, Deron Lamb team, the year before that, they went to the Final Four. And that right there, they won it their sophomore year. That 1 year is a ton of experience. So I get that experience does help. But the college game is very different. You guys were just in high school in May. You guys had the summer, and now you're playing together and going to the Elite Eight, Final Four. I think that's a big deal because a lot of these veteran teams also aren't getting that far. So if you think of the talent that's going to the NBA that are upperclassmen, and it's not much, people want to pluck the young guys. If a dude is 21, people are like, he's old already. It's going to be his 22nd birthday during the season, like 22. This kid has still got fresh legs.
But like who's great in the NBA at 22?
Yeah,
not many people.
But all I'm saying is we can't look at it and be like, well, they're not winning championships. When if any other program had a similar resume, we would say, wow, they're really doing it. Like Jim Boeheim's got one national championship. He's one of the best coaches of all time. Since One and Done was instituted, Calipari's won a championship and has gone to more Final Fours. He's done better than all these guys we think of, except for Coach K, Roy Williams, and Jay Wright. He's done better than all of them.
Man, fair. It's funny you bring up Boeheim, and it's think about how much respect and love he got before he won his natty. And you look at what's my man in East Lansing, Izzo. He's only won one, and he puts his hands on his players. That's a conversation for another day. But outside of Coach K, what active coaches are winning multiple championships? Yeah, Jay Wright won recently. What's my man's name? Roy Williams is one. But a lot of these great college coaches
have one. Bill Self only got one. Calipari got one.
Just got it. I mean, it's been 10 years now, but
yeah, Patino's got a couple. But I'm saying a lot of these coaches that we're looking at and people are praising and saying are all-timers have one championship. And I don't understand the flack that Calipari gets, and like he's ruining the game. Y'all would trade resumes with him in a minute, except for like those three coaches we named.
Yeah, but they're haters, and also he's exploiting the inefficiency in the system, and he can just do it better than them. And he had this documentary where he said, "I'm in the business of getting these guys rich, get them to the next level, and if I win a national championship on the way to it, then so be it."
Yeah, and you've got these guys who are like who take offense to that, and they're like, he's just being a filter for the NBA. He's ruining the game, but he's still doing better than you. If his MO is to get these kids to the league, and that's why they go play for him, and he's still winning more than you, that's a you problem.
Yeah. So another thing that I was looking at with college basketball, and the reason why I just think it's really okay for it to become its own game, I looked through the Naismith Players of the Year over the last 20 years. And do you know only 6 of them were all-star or all-NBA players?
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. Luka Garza's going to win it this year.
And no one cares.
We'll see what happens. Obi Toppin is actually doing well. He's surprising, and the Knicks as a whole are surprising. But like McBuckets, I like McDermott on the Pacers, but like nobody really thought he was going to come in and light it up.
Hansbrough, come on, man.
Yeah, that one. Evan Turner won one, and I was in high school when he came out, so I thought he was going to do better. But a lot of those players that are winning those awards ain't it.
Bruh, how about Andrew Bogut? He won one. Never made an All-Star game, but he made All-NBA one year. Andrew
Bogut was balling. Granted, I'm not going to sit up here and say he was one of the best players in the NBA, but he was a solid role guy.
Yeah, and what I've come to accept and realize is there's no science to translating whether or not college to NBA is going to work.
There isn't, but I would say that the NBA is easier to get, I think, than other sports. Like you can look at the players, and of course the accolades you win in college, they don't always translate to the NBA. But for the most part, people get it right when they're saying like, we're going to trade this guy early and this is what it's going to become. So Kyrie didn't play much, but you could see like this kid's going to be good. He went number 1 and look what he's done. A lot of the times I think they get it right.
But I mean, think about players in the top, let's say 5 to 12 range. It's a crapshoot. And I think the way that we compare players is just terrible. You know, every time we do a comp, and with the NFL draft heating up, we're hearing all these comps, and the comp is always a Pro Bowler or
an All-Pro player,
or a Hall of Famer. And I get that you're trying to match styles, to names that the casual fan will recognize. But sometimes you need to compare that point guard coming out of St. John's to Emmanuel Mudiay. You're like, he's a rotation guy, nothing special, but I mean, his career can be 3 years, his career can be 13 years. It just depends on what type of locker room guy he is and what coaches he plays for.
Yeah, that's the one part about comps that bug me, because the comp is always someone who is an all-timer. And I'm just like, it's okay to say, like Cade Cunningham, I'm not going to say I've sat up here and watched all his games. He's projected to be the number one pick. When I watch him, I'm like, he kind of reminds me of like a Brandon Ingram, Jason Tatum type. And that kind of makes sense. B.I. went number 2. Jason went number 3. And people were saying he should have gone number 1. So I'm like, that makes sense. That's a number 1 player. This is what he could become. But people are like, we got to compare him to, and then insert all-time great scorer. And I'm just like, why don't we pump our brakes on this?
I hear Penny.
Yeah. And I'm just like, why don't we just slow down before we start comparing him to first-team All-NBA guys?
Because that's not what we do in this microwave society. But let's not talk about college basketball too long, because people don't really care about college basketball, despite what they say.